Cops of Reddit, what is the most suspicious thing you've ever caught somebody doing for a totally illegitimate reason? Prior us Coast Guard. We were doing a security boarding on a vessel planning on entering port with some hazardous cargo. Me and one other guy are in the engine room, making sure everything is kosher, when we catch a glimpse of some boots barely sticking out from under a piece of machinery. Since, as far as we knew, all crew were present and accounted for above deck, we were understandably concerned. We radio up asking about it. Get told all present and accounted for up above. So we're thinking stowaway or someone being smuggled. Luckily it was neither. Just a dude who legit fell asleep while doing some maintenance. He shared a name with one of the other crew, so that's how we missed his absence. Apparently they, our guy up above, checked the same guy twice. Go fig. My cousin is a cop and told us the story of seeing a car driving slowly at about 3 AM through a neighborhood that had had several break-ins. He thinks to himself that they're looking for a target, so he puts on his lights and pulls them over. He walks up and the driver puts the window down and she turns to look at him with fire in her eyes and says, in a harsh whisper, "This had better be important because I just got the baby to sleep." He looks in the back and there's a baby in a car seat, sound asleep. The memory of what it was like when his babies wouldn't sleep rushes back, and he says, "Oh no, I'm so sorry. Never mind," and goes back to his car. She drives away slowly. He's just glad he didn't wake the baby. Here's a story from a family friend who was a sergeant in a major West Coast city. One of his new officers was late for roll call one night. After about 45 minutes SGT, gets a call from another station asking if he was the SGT for the missing officer. Hilarity ensues. Apparently, the missing officer was getting ready to leave his apartment for roll call for the night shift. As he walked out to the stairs, he sees a guy in a ski mask hop through his neighbor's window. Cop radios the burglary in progress and runs back to his apartment to get his shotgun. When he gets back to neighbor's house, he heard a female screaming and the sounds of a struggle. Cop announces himself, kicks open the front door, runs to the kitchen and sees what he thinks is ski mask guy sexually assaulting the neighbor. The neighbor sees cop with shotgun screaming at ski mask guy and she completely freaks out. Turns out ski mask guy was neighbor's boyfriend husband doing some sort of roleplay fantasy at neighbor's request. At least nobody got shot and apparently, the cop was known thereafter as Officer Cockblock. I find so many suspicious vehicles in our National Veterans Cemetery in my jurisdiction. They almost always turn out to be Pokemon Goers. There's an old penitentiary in the middle of the city here. It was to be deactivated and it finally was shut down by the governor. People got used to that building being empty, but for some bureaucratic reasons, they had to reopen it again. Temporarily. That means holding bad people in again, and even though the neighbors weren't happy about it, they didn't think much of it, since it was temporary. Anyway, it is a building very close to the road, to residences and commercial buildings. It's not a huge place, but it has tall walls built somewhat like a fort or a castle. Then one day, I wasn't even working. I'm driving by the street behind it and I see 4 people rappelling down the ducking wall. They weren't doing it each on their own rope. They were doing it in the same rope. And it looked a whole lot like that Hollywood scene where the prisoners escape down the sheet's rope. This was in the middle of the day too. Noon, I think. I had to go around, find a place to park my car and observe. I called in HQ and asked if the old penitentiary was still open and just get its status. While I did this, I got to really see what they were doing and it didn't look like escapees anymore. It turned out to be graffiti artists hired by the state to paint that big wall facing the houses. Only part of the building was reactivated and this wall was on the deactivated wing. The graffiti artists were assessing something. This was 3 years ago. There's a cool painting on it now. I'm still glad I didn't have to chase 4 inmates that day. Edit, grammar. Not a cop, but I wanted to make my father's headstone area look a little better. I thought planting a lavender on either side of the headstone Lavender looked nice and do pretty well when neglected. In case you didn't know it. You draw a lot of attention at a cemetery when you start digging near a grave with a full-sized shovel. I am the suspect in this situation. I lived in a large town in the south of the UK in my own terraced house. Outside my house was a bus stop, so it had a few people who go by outside each day, but it wasn't in the heart of the high street. I had suffered from cluster flies for a few days and they came out of nowhere. We are talking maybe 50 or so, which is a little alarming, but there was nowhere I could see they were coming from. I got rid of them as quick as they came about and went about my day as normal. One day at the weekend I had a knock at the door with riot police who stated they believed that someone had died in the property and they were able to enter under an emergency act of law without a warrant. In their wisdom they spoke to the neighbors about who lived here after a report from an elderly lady visiting the bus stop. The neighbors mentioned my ex-girlfriend who they didn't see for a few months. We broke up and she moved out, but the police put the flies report and this fact together as me being a Krella. The police were sure I had something to hide as they instantly didn't believe I owned the house. I work in it. So make good money and am thankful I saved hard to get on the housing ladder, but they weren't having any of it. I had to then wait under surveillance while my house was searched and riot police all in the street. I am a keen gardener and upstairs in the airing cupboard I was attempting to grow some from seeds. The police were convinced that 23-year-old me was instead running a cannabis factory. In the end they found no dead body and they realized their mistake when I pointed out the 50 cacti around the house they conveniently didn't notice. I'm sure I'm on some kind of list now, but they left almost disappointed that their amazing detective work found an it nerd that likes spiny flora and not the next serial killer. TLDR, police thought I murdered my ex-GF and was running a cannabis factory in my home. Son of a cop. My dad told me about a time. Back in the 80s. My father was sitting in his cruiser. Around the corner from a bar. A car drives by swerving a little with exhaust coming for the tailpipe. Signifying a recently started vehicle. Pulls the guy over. Smells alcohol on the driver. While also noticing a large staff in the backseat. He has the driver step out. Then inquires about the staff. The driver tells my dad I'm a black belt in Kung Fu. I use it in class. So my father, unconvinced, asked him to demonstrate his proficiency with the staff. Whilst proving his sobriety in a sort of impromptu field sobriety test, the driver puts on a little show for Dad on the side of the road. Dad's enjoying the show, but starts to hear sirens coming from all directions. A passerby had seen my dad on the side of the road in a face-off with a crazy man and a stick. Thinking my dad was in need of help, the passerby called the cops. Apparently, my dad had been so wrapped up in the show, he had not heard the radio calls for him. So dispatch sent all available units to his rescue. Passerby thought my dad was getting us kicked by ninja. The first one that comes to mind for me. Late at night. Saw a dude hauling copper pipe out of a local grocery store after it closed down. Copper theft at the time was super common. So I thought I had a burglary in progress. I stop out. Get ready for an easy arrest. Ask him what he's doing. He says he was hired to clean the place out. Ask why he's taking the copper. Owner told him that his payment was the copper piping. Since it wasn't going to be a grocery store after. They didn't need it. I didn't buy it for a minute. Bullshit detector was screaming at this point. So I find the owner in our records. Call him. And sure as shit. Dude was hired to clean the place out and was paid in copper pipe. That was their agreement. But then I asked him why he was out at 2 AM. Since it was super suspicious. Since the place closed down. There was no AC. As it was the middle of summer. 2 AM was the best way to do it and keep cool. Recently I was conducting a Res 18 house search on a guy we'd arrested in a local club with loads of Drew gus on him. In his room I found an oversized, out of place, vase with false flowers in them. Suspicion raised. I take the flowers out and in the bottom I saw what I believed to be a balaclava. Here we go. I took it out, unfolded it, and it turned out to be a jumper for a small dog. I look in the vase again. I see a blue velvet drawstring bag. I manipulate it slightly and it rustles. With the feeling of lots of little packets inside. I remove it slowly. Open the bag and inside are some retro Scrabble pieces. Da fuck. We didn't find any further Drew gus in his room. We did however find a big duck-off sized machete under his mattress wrapped up in a tea towel. So that was interesting. Still confused AF about the contents of that vase though. Actual cop here too. Nothing major. But one night I come across a pickup truck parked behind a small business. Backed up to the dumpster. Guy is next to the truck emptying out trash from the bed of the truck and throwing it into the dumpster. Figured it was someone illegally dumping their crap in someone else's dumpster to avoid having to go to the landfill. Make contact with the guy who says he owns the business and that he is renovating his home. But ran out of room in his dumpster there. He comes back listed as the contact key holder for the business and the truck he was driving was registered to the business. So it was all good. Not exciting. I know. Police officer here. Long story short. Guy gets locked out of his house by his wife and we catch him trying to get back into his house. It was just after midnight and we got a call of a suspicious person looking into the home. We respond code 2, lights. No sirens, and switch off the lights before we get close to mask our approach. As we pull up to the house, we see no signs of anyone at the front of the house. So we walk around the rear and bam. Guy with a crowbar wrenching on the back door. I yell. Police. Drop the crowbar. Dude starts screaming and nearly crying because we scared him so bad. Turns out he went to Tim Hortons to get a coffee as him and the wife had a few drinks and he forgot his keys and cell phone in the house. She was so drunk she forgot he left and locked the doors like she does every night. Poor bastard tried to wake his wife up and she was passed out and didn't hear him. He grabbed a crowbar from his shed to try to pop the locking mechanism out and we caught him. We managed to get a hold of her by calling her on my cell. When she answered the door, she admitted to accidentally locking him out and gave us the exact same sequence of events. I honestly wish we had body cams so we could replay the poor bastard's face and high-pitched scream. Late note, wow my poor inbox. So to address a few things. 1. Our service does not have tasers. We train constantly in advanced hand-to-hand tactics. We are getting tasers soon though. 2. Our hands were on our gums. But after yelling the challenge and hearing him scream and drop the crowbar, we de-escalated the situation completely. When you hear a door being wrenched on, you know there may be an improvised weapon involved. Hence for officer safety we were ready should he charge us. Obligatory not a cop. But I have a story. However, I have to give a little backstory. I posted this on another Askreddit thread. So I decided to get off. Turns out it was a relatively good move. Because as soon as I got off the bus I began furiously shitting myself. And I mean like full on as blasting diarrhea. Of course it didn't really help me avoid cheating myself but it helped me not embarrass myself by turning the bus into an asgone that day. I didn't give the full story. As what happened thereafter was probably even more embarrassing than cheating myself. Anyway. After the story above happened, I found myself in the middle of the downtown area of my city. A place where I was not familiar with. However, luckily I had my phone. So I turned on my location and tried to figure out where I was. Thankfully, I found out that I was really close to the Natural History Museum that I visited quite frequently. So I get there and decide to stand on the side of the building where there is this small round area with stone benches. I call my parents, and after having a few laughs they agree to pick me up. However, I'm like 45 minutes away from my house, so it's gonna take a while. What I didn't expect is that people were frequently walking past me. Apparently they found me suspicious. They apparently couldn't smell the radiating stench of sheet filling the area and decided to inform the cops that I was there. Who said people thought I was waiting for a drug deal? This forced me to admit that I did indeed sheet my pants, and after they came closer I think they realized it and didn't want to go towards the front of the museum where there were a lot of people. Needless to say, I was embarrassed. The cop politely asked if I needed a ride home or a phone to call someone on, and I assured them that someone was coming to get, and they left. And there you have it. The most embarrassing moment of my life. Edit, a word. Lol. Maybe I can use the silver to buy me some new underwear. Edit 2. Maybe I should have used an alt for this one. Was a cop in Cops and Robbers game. Caught one of my friends eating what appeared to be my snacks. But he just happened to have the same type. Patrolling a military housing neighborhood. I had noticed a suspicious van parked around the area over the past few nights. Always in a different spot, but I could never catch it coming or going. So around the 5th night of this, I hide my car and wait. Sure enough, the van rolls through. I waited a few minutes before following. Turn the corner and light up 3 guys rummaging through all the trash cans left on the street. Turns out, they were part of Sis, the show. But army version. They suspected someone in the area was cooking meth, and were going through that garbage cans to find discarded ingredients. I only found this out after getting chewed out after they called my supervisors. I still don't feel bad. No one told me.